Hi, I'm Lamas. Welcome to the review of Oppenheimer. Now, I watched the movie over 24 hours ago, but this is the 24 hours review. I just felt like this movie needed a lot more time for me to actually sit down and process what happened. Now, before we get into it, I will say this is definitely my favorite movie of the year, and it's not even close. Barbie was pretty close, and Across the Spider-Verse also pretty close, but Oppenheimer. And I might be a little biased. I'm getting a physics degree. I know the physics that went into making the bomb. It's all really cool stuff. Quantum mechanics is a very fun field in the physics world. But this movie had more than just that going for it. And this is why it was probably, and most definitely, my movie of the year. So let's talk about that. First, let's talk about the story. So the story is all about Robert J. Oppenheimer and his life before, during, and after making the first atomic bomb. He was the director of the atomic program over in that little town that they made. I forgot what the name was. But they made this whole town, and he was the main director behind making this bomb. And in the story, it was honestly a little jarring because you thought it would just be that portion. It could have been just an hour and a half of him making the bomb, but they added just another hour and a half of all this other stuff that's happening. His life before, his traveling across Europe, learning quantum mechanics and bringing the field over to America, and basically being one of the fathers of North American quantum mechanics and quantum physics. It talks about his life, his family, his friends, how they were a lot of them were influenced by the Communist Party at the time and all that jazz. And then he meets women, he does some things with the women. There are like 3 sex scenes in the movie, by the way. So if you don't like sex scenes, but who doesn't? And then, talks about how he made the bomb. The bomb scene was amazing. It goes afterwards, and then how one of who you thought was a good guy in the movie actually was one of the main people trying to bring Oppenheimer down. And it just blows you away how they layered all these different types of movies, how they set up the story in a non-linear format and you could tell it was non-linear and from different perspectives, because the colored version of the movie was Robert J. Oppenheimer's perspective of the movie, while the black and white was Robert Downey Jr.'s character, his side of the story and his version of the story and his perspective. And it went back and forth between time. It went from not completely current or not the earliest stuff to back and earlier forward, back and forth. It jumped all around the place. So if you don't like those kind of storylines where it's non-linear, it jumps around a lot, and you get confused by that a lot, it really does not help you that much when it moves across and everything, besides the few points where you could tell that, it's kind of in the future because they talked about something that you just watched, then you can kind of tell. But other than that, really all you could tell was by their face and their hair that it turned a little more gray or something like that. So if you don't like those linear kinds of stories, then you're probably not going to like this movie. But if you can follow along, maybe watch it once or twice, get along with it, see what's happening. Now that was a well-written, well-directed, well-made story. It's kind of amazing how they can take the story of just this one individual who, of course, he did something amazing. He brought us into the nuclear age. And otherwise, not really much happens in the movie. It's not like other World War II movies where, there's bloodshed, there's fighting, there's all this chaos happening, and it captures that side of World War II. It captures a completely different side of World War II, and yet it blew all those movies out of the water in the worldwide box office. At time of recording, it just passed Dunkirk, and it passed Saving Private Ryan. So it is the top grossing World War II movie ever made. From beginning, middle to end of the story, it set up so much stuff. Set it up right as you thought it finished setting everything up. It set up something else it was just insane what they did with the story and what Nolan did with all that stuff. It was just kind of amazing. Moving on from the story, I've already mentioned several of the characters. You know, there's Robert J. Oppenheimer, his nemesis, his wife, like all his colleagues at the university, all the people who helped him along the way at the site where they made the nuclear bomb, and all this stuff. And honestly, there's a lot of movies where it's like, oh man, you know, why did this character really have to be there? Do they really add anything to the story? Do they really add all this stuff that you know, like, God, maybe they could have taken that guy out and it would have saved 30 minutes for the movie and we could have just got a better movie. It was like one of those things where it's like every single character, no matter how much time they were on screen, was really important to the story. And I think that was really nice, like a really nice refresher compared to some like movies these days where it feels like they could have just left out the whole part. Like, what are they doing with these characters, man? Or they just screwed up these characters? No, they stayed true to who the characters were and what they did back in the day. You know, all the actors that portrayed them moving into characters in the acting. Oh my goodness, Cillian did such a good job playing this character. It was amazing. He also kind of looks like him, like the real life version of him. And, you know, Robert Downey Jr. did an amazing job. All these characters did such a good job just portraying these characters. And, you know, when it comes up to like best actor and best supporting actor these days, it's actually really close this year, you know, with, you know, Barbie and Ken. I think he has to be my favorite supporting actor. But for main actor, I just don't know how you don't choose Oppenheimer and all this stuff these days. It's truly just so good to see them all do all this stuff. And when you hear they filmed the whole movie in less than like 2 months, it's insane how they was able to do this. I read a thing where he learned Dutch over a weekend. He learned like 1,000 words in Dutch over a weekend just to say like 3 in one scene. It was insane. Like, who does that sort of thing? Now, there was a couple things that people were, you know, where they took the direction of this movie where they wanted to focus on and stuff like that. And there's a couple of places where people were kind of upset with it. You know, why didn't they focus more on, you know, what it actually did to Japan, all that stuff, like the actual consequences of using the bomb. They only mentioned it a few times in the end of the movie, what actually happened. I heard there's a couple characters that were taken out that were there back in time where they were given very minor roles or everything. But I mean, the movie's already 3 hours long. I mean, and I couldn't hold my pee. I tried so hard, I was sweating balls, but I had to go pee. And you know, it is what it is. But I think the direction that Christopher Nolan took this movie was a really well thought out and well done direction. You can't fit everything into a movie if you want to keep it under, you know, 20 hours. If you really wanted to make it exactly real to life, then sure, he could have made it a 20-hour movie, you know, but you just can't do that. You need to cut out some things that maybe aren't important. Maybe they are important, but he wanted to focus on this other stuff. And I think it's completely fine. The production quality was phenomenal. I mean, shooting an IMAX 70mm is just like, you just don't see that much these days. And he's one of the only like main directors that actually pushes this format. I wasn't lucky enough to see it in IMAX 70mm, but I did see it in IMAX digital, and freaking amazing. I mean, you see the huge difference between the quality of the ads before the movie that were not designed for an IMAX screen versus this movie made for the IMAX screen. It's insane what they can do with these movies these days. They had to literally invent film to shoot this movie in the black and white that they did for portions of the movie. And it's just freaking amazing. I did see some things. There was a few historical inaccuracies here and there, but man, what historical movie doesn't have a few historical inaccuracies and everything? And there's been a few things where like one of the descendants of him, he like said like some of the scenes weren't true or something like that, but you know, I think it was fine. Now, the pacing of the movie, it was good pacing for the most part. I think the ending could have been moved along a little bit faster than it was, or they could have thrown that out through the movie a little bit more than just there at the end. But I understand in terms of like where it was in the story, they had to do it that way. The ending did seem like it just dragged on. You're like, oh man, they just dropped the bomb. We have an hour left of the movie. What the heck are they going to fit into an hour? And I mean, hey, they did it, man. They fit a lot of stuff in that movie in that hour. And it adds so much onto the character that just completely changes the character and the outcome of this movie that you didn't think was going to be. I think most people going into the movie, they don't know who Oppenheimer is unless, they probably mentioned him in school, unless you went and got like your history degree or your physics degree. You don't really know who Oppenheimer is. And I think this movie really shows who he was before, during, and after the bomb, and how he truly was the father of the atomic bomb, and just the weight laying on his conscience of what he brought into the world, how he brought this world into the Cold War nuclear era between America and Russia, and how at any moment the whole world could just go blowing up into war. It's just kind of phenomenal how you can see this other side of him that usually you don't see. I mean, like when I thought about him before, it was like, oh, he made a bomb. He's probably pretty like happy about it. He's like, yeah, I made a bomb. No, that weighed on his conscience for the rest of his life. And I think they really do get that across in some of the pacing and how they moved the movie along, especially in the middle part. I think was the best pacing of the movie. The beginning might have been a little too fast. The mid part was perfect, and the ending might have been a little too slow. But other than that, it was just an amazing job. The sound quality of this movie, seeing it in IMAX, please go see it in some version of IMAX, any version of IMAX. There was a few times where it was like the sound maybe could have turned down one notch. But man, if you're listening to it, it only had a few times where I thought it was overly loud. I didn't even think the bomb was that loud. There was one other part that was way louder. It was so weird why that part was louder. I have no clue. But overall, the sound was amazing. And one of the problems of shooting in the IMAX is some of those talking scenes would be very, very hard to see. And it's because the IMAX camera is so freaking loud that they'd have to edit it out of the sound so that you wouldn't hear the like of the camera going around. And still being able to hear all the characters talking in the IMAX, the bomb going off, I just literally blown out of my seat. Everything happening in the movie just sounded so good. Like, I don't think any other movie this year comes close in the sound quality of this movie. And the highs and the lows were so drastic and so different. At one part, like, it was good, boom, 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 and then hit quiet. And you could hear the women behind you go, oh my God. And you wanted to laugh, but the scene was so impressive and so breathtaking that you didn't want to say anything or laugh at all. And then, of course, seeing the movie in IMAX, the image quality was amazing. I truly wish I could go see it in IMAX 70mm, but I don't think I'm going to be that lucky, unfortunately. The closest one to me is in Arizona, with like 10 of them being in Los Angeles and New York and Florida. So I don't think I'm going to get to those anytime soon before the end of the runtime of the movie. But if if you're lucky enough to be there, it's worth the 2-hour drive. It's worth the hour drive. Go see it in IMAX 70mm if you can get a seat. Go do it. It'll be so much better. It'll be so much worth the wait. It'll be so much better. Trust me. And because I was just thinking about I'll just go see it in regular. Who cares? I'll just see it in regular. No. I had to see it at least in IMAX. IMAX Digital is good enough these days compared to 10, 15 years ago, to where, honestly, who knows if there was that big of a difference. There was no CGI used in the movie, which it gets you your head scratching. Like, how the heck did he film some of these scenes if there's no CGI in the movie? Nowadays, we assume everything's CGI, and nothing in this movie was CGI. How the hell did he manage that? And it's just the camera shots, like the close-ups of everything, like seeing all that stuff. It was just perfect. It was just such a good movie. And honestly, I think there was just like one or two things in the movie that I would otherwise change, but I would have to give this movie a 98 out of 100. It was the almost perfect movie this year, and it would be 100% my movie of the year. And it was just, I wish everyone could go see it, but I understand that Barbie is a lot easier to go see than Oppenheimer for a lot of like modern America and the world, especially since Japan, understandably blocked access to the movie and banned it in the country. It's just a lot of the stuff just goes over people's head, or it's too mundane for people to be like that interested in. So if you can see it, you can understand it, then go see the movie. It was a great movie. It will be worth your time. It is definitely going to get movie of the year. Mark my words, whenever that stuff comes out, it is just that good of a movie. So that's been my review, 98 of 100. If you enjoyed this, please let me know what I can do better, what was good. If you want to see more of these, I was going to start doing them after each movie I saw. This one came out a little bit after the one I did see, but I wanted to have enough time for it to marinate and make sure it was all good. So thanks you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.